Mortal mankind has a deep need of holy places. Buildings dedicated to our spiritual needs, different from ordinary habitations and workaday life. Places to celebrate the best in us, to honor the gods, to pray for mercy and ask for help from heaven. Quiet places to meditate on the eternal, to explore the meaning of life and death, of good and evil. To connect through ritual with the order and form of a religion, with fellow worshipers. To store holy relics and the symbols of faith. To think about the saints, an afterlife, and the idea of immortality, whether in heaven, in nirvana, or through reincarnation. It is natural that in our quest for the eternal, we usually choose the most lasting of all building materials: stone. Granite, sandstone, marble, volcanic tuff. As if with care and maintenance, the temple could last forever. Some are so ancient, they were made before written history. They were vitally important to millions of our ancestors, and they can work for us today. Therefore, a journey to the best of them is time well spent. Their power, their atmosphere, their magic still works, no matter who made them and why. But as in so much of life, the pilgrim must choose the time carefully and come prepared to be open beyond expectation. Spiritual buildings are built by faith. Some require vast treasures, extraordinary feats of art and engineering, and endless human effort over hundreds of years to construct. It may have taken 100 years to build Borobudur, the largest Buddhist temple in all the world. But faiths change, and human affairs are in constant flux. For hundreds of years, Borobudur was a spiritual center, and then there were new religious beliefs and different political dynasties, and it was abandoned and forgotten. It was buried in volcanic ash and overrun by the Javanese jungle. It slept for centuries until it was rediscovered by Raffles, an agent of the British Empire, in the 1850s. Faith is the engine which drives the creation of temples, but it is not necessary for their rediscovery and appreciation. Here is a description of his rediscovery of a temple in Egypt from the diary of a 19th century scholar. We ran helter-skelter through a stand of palm trees, a fairy scene in the moonlight. Finally, the temple itself appeared, bathed in soft light, a picture which made us drunk with admiration. Perfect peace and mysterious magic reigned under the portico, with its gigantic columns, and outside the moonlight was blinding, strange and wonderful contrast. Then we built a fire of dried grass in the interior. A new outburst of enthusiasm, like a sudden delirium. It was like a fever, a madness. I will begin my journey with a visit to the simplest of sacred structures, the beehive cells of Skellig Michael. This mountainous island is 11 kilometers off the southwest corner of Ireland and must be reached by boat. Here, beginning in the Dark Ages, monks built 6 beehive cells for meditation and living. There are also oratories and gravestones. The cells are built of flat, dry stones, which project inward until they meet in the center. The rocks are held in place by their own weight in a system called corbel vaulting. It works best with small spaces. Those who lived here must have suffered from cold and exposure. Their food came from the sea and seabirds or from tiny gardens. Their water from catch basins. It is a difficult and dangerous journey, far from other human beings, a place to contemplate God and nature in silence and solitude. An isolated community with a spiritual focus, high above ordinary life, close to God or the gods, and with a view of all nature. The architects of many holy sites have chosen this route to the sacred. Machu Picchu was built by the Incas sometime in the 15th century. It was hidden from the Spanish when they overran the Inca Empire and remained lost for hundreds of years. Then, in 1911, it was rediscovered by the American archaeologist Hiram Bingham. Up steep trails, he found the ruins of Machu Picchu, half buried in the jungle. The romance of this discovery was published in the National Geographic magazine, and Hiram Bingham gave the world an image of an explorer-adventurer, still current today. The mountaintop was carefully terraced, and its wonderful buildings constructed of stones so meticulously fitted that it's hard to force a blade of grass between them. The terraces were planted to provide food, and the whole city designed to collect rainwater in channels and funnel it to cisterns for drinking and irrigation. It is still not certain who lived in Machu Picchu. Princes, priests, holy virgins, or perhaps the great Inca himself. Or when, or why, it was abandoned. What is clear is that it's a spiritual place with a connection to the mist-shrouded mountain ranges around it. A giant sculpture mirrors the jagged peaks on the horizon. On a high point, at the edge of the cliff, is a smoothly carved object called the Sunstone. This was the center of an annual ritual to tether the sun, to ensure its steady course through the heavens, to grow the crops and warm the people. The spirit and beauty of this once secret place now attracts hundreds of thousands of visitors yearly. Building towards height, towards the sky, towards heaven, is an aspiration for many temple builders. The site may be on a plain rather than a mountain, but the building itself can still soar upwards. Bagan is an ancient city in Burma, now called Myanmar. From the 9th to the 13th century, it was the capital of the kingdom of Bagan, and the site of 10,000 Buddhist temples and pagodas, of which over 2,200 survive today. Often these structures have a pentagonal floor plan to honor the fifth Buddha, a vaulted interior, and a pointed and even gilded spire. The Dharmayazika pagoda can be experienced by entering it, but still more thrillingly, by climbing it. Here the designers can exploit two fundamental human reactions to produce an exciting spiritual experience. The first is the instinctive fear of falling, which produces a rush of adrenaline and can result in a kind of religious high. The second is a new perspective on the ordinary world below, a godlike view from above. This must have been an especially powerful experience for the peasant of ancient times, whose day-to-day life was limited to toiling in the fields and the marketplace. This pattern is repeated, with variations, large and small, again and again in Bagan. It is stunning to contemplate the endless human labor through the centuries and the depth of religious belief which resulted in these acres of temples. As is often the case, politics and social prestige also played an important part. The majesty and power of the king and his dynasty was made visible in the size and beauty of the pagoda he built, and important families had to have their own shrines. In an oblique way, this extraordinary investment is being returned to the people of Myanmar. For today, Bagan is one of the most popular tourist destinations in this part of the world. Many temples are sited on the banks of holy rivers. Bagan itself is held in a great bend of the famous Irrawaddy River. The Irrawaddy was vital to the commerce and the transportation of old Burma, and also vital to her spiritual life. The people still launch little rafts bearing presents to the gods on the river, and they pass hundreds of Buddhist temples and holy places on their voyage to the Andaman Sea. In southern India, in the ruined city of Hampi, is a great Hindu temple on a river. Here, the elephant greets us at the main gate. Feeding the people and the monkeys is still a daily devotion. The temple of Virupaksha is dedicated to the god Shiva. A portion of the holy Tungabhadra River is diverted to run through the temple. Pilgrims can launch a coracle on the river far upstream from the temple.
No, he will just say goodbye to us.
The banks are dotted with smaller temples. Most of these are abandoned and in ruins, but their elegantly cut and fitted stones still provide a quiet and contemplative spiritual experience. The great temple of Virupaksha was begun in the 7th century and grew until Muslims conquered and destroyed the city in the 16th century. For nearly 500 years, Hampi has lain in ruins around it. Yet the temple continues as a destination for pilgrims and a center for Hindu life. Nearby, the holy Tungabhadra still flows its timeless way to the sea. Water often plays an important part in temple building. Many of India's temples have connected stepped tanks, which fill with water during the monsoon season and serve as reservoirs during the dry season. Water in them is considered as coming from the holy river Ganges, the most sacred of all India's rivers.